Welcome to The Ripple, where extraordinary women executives get real about their career journeys. This season, thanks to our partnership with GNW Consulting, you'll hear even more stories from women leaders about how they're building visibility for themselves, their careers, and their companies. I'm your host, Ashley Lobbs, and today we're joined by the courageous Stephanie J. Neill, a builder of products, systems, and teams as the head of product at Stripe. She's here to share how stretching outside of her comfort zone helped her become a champion for others. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, Ashley. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, me too. I want to hear about your journey with visibility. What has it looked like for you to build a reputation in your career, and what do you think that's done for you?
First, I should say I'm a product leader. I'm currently with Stripe, but I've worked across a bunch of great internet properties. I've also worked for the federal government, always doing product management. And the role of product management is one where visibility is just baked in because you are basically the lead on what you are building. You are defining what good looks like, and then you are ensuring that you ship that and that you're shipping it to the right people, and it's providing them real, tangible value that moves the business forward. You have to be visible with your stakeholders, which are often, high ups within the company, even when you're just sometimes owning a feature from early career and on. So I've had a lot of experience working through and understanding how and where I need to show up in order to drive the impact that I need for my teams. So that's sort of like implicit within my day-to-day professional career. It's been true throughout. But I've also been very intentional about trying to build visibility or get comfortable with visibility is maybe a better way of putting it within my broader product management community, like building Stephanie the brand, I call it. And I started doing that really early because I recognized that I'm not a natural performer. I'm not super comfortable being the center of attention. I get very anxious when I have to go talk to groups that I don't know. And so I just recognized, I was like, I have to get better at this or I'm not going to be successful in like doing what I love doing and what I want to do. So I've had sort of like the internal trials as well as put myself through intentional external ones to continually get more comfortable and get better about driving visibility.
That makes a lot of sense that inside the company, you're somebody who's very visible and, on one hand, the pressure is on, and on the second hand, you're one of the ultimate experts on what's going on inside that company, inside that product. And at the same time, ironically, product leaders aren't necessarily the first people we think of as the face of the company outwardly, right? They're pretty far down the list. I think that's changing. I think that as B2B becomes more about hearing from the internal experts and not just the C-suite, we're seeing that change. But I'm curious, you recognized pretty early on in your career that it was going to be important to you to be able to represent who you are and the work that you're passionate about in the broader community in order to be successful. Can you say more about what that meant to you? Like, what did you feel you were going to get that was going to contribute to your success by doing that?
I mean, candidly, it started with me just needing to get comfortable speaking to groups of people. I just had to do that to basically retain the job that I had as like a junior. And I was like, okay, I need all the practice I can get. So I'm practicing internally, like I'm, raising my hand for coaching people on how to use my portion of the product or basically anything. Like we're recording a webinar. Okay, hey, like I can help with that, just like forcing myself to raise my hand. And then I also looked around and haphazardly, I actually didn't know this was an option, but this was like the late 2000s or something. There were these sort of product communities that were growing. So PCamp, Product Camp was a big one. I think it still might be, I'm not sure. But there was this concept of Product Camp where you would sort of stand up an event that like basically help people with product skills or develop their product skills and network. And so I reached out to some organizers and I was like, hey, like when is the Product Camp San Francisco? I'd love to be a speaker. I'd like to help, in some way. What can I do? We don't even actually have Product Camps in. We only have Product Camp South Silicon Valley, which is like a little further south. And they're like, do you want to stand up PCamp? And I was like, yes. So I had this opportunity to like not only like further develop interesting like event organization, but also be like the leader of that whole session and get to like MC the whole thing and take it through. So that was a lot. I don't know if actually I would recommend.
That sounds like a tremendous amount of work. It's like, oh, hey, what do you recommend? Well, I recommend starting up just like an entire large event for your entire industry. This sounds like a second job.
It felt like it actually, yeah. But it was super worth it. It's funny because the other angle to this is I'm very intentional about my life plan in general. And a part of that life plan, I have a section on my values. And I always knew that one of the things I wanted to do was like give back. Like I feel that I have had a lot of opportunity and I always want to make sure that I'm sharing and creating new opportunity.
Yeah.
And so that was always like kind of in my head. And that felt like probably a big part of why I was like, hell yeah, I want to organize this. Like I want to do something for fellow product people. But another thing is sort of how I make decisions. I like to go roaring or boring is a term.
Ooh, okay. Let's hear more.
Yeah, roaring or boring. Go big or go home in terms of like life decisions. And this also felt, oh, sure, I could be just one of many practicing little by little and improving incrementally, or I can jump in with 2 feet and like get just like a crash course.
Okay, but let's be realistic. If you always choose the roaring option, and I'm saying this as somebody who often does, how do you not just burn out? Are you sometimes choosing the boring option?
Yes, I mean, I think you do have to. So the framework, I mean, PMs, we love their frameworks. The framework that I use is you have your comfort zone. This is where you are perfectly at peace. You could do it all day long and you would never, like your voice would never quiver. Your hand would never shake. You are just confident. Then the next circle out from that is your stretch zone. And that is like where, okay, you're feeling a little uncomfortable. You can probably get this done. You're pretty sure. But you think maybe you haven't done it before, maybe you haven't felt confident doing it before. And then everything else, the rest of the whole world, is your panics. You want to stay out of your panic zones. That is a bad move. That's what you say no to. That's not roaring. That's like screaming or something.
That's a great way to put it.
But like the very tip of your stretch zone is just the tip of that circle. Is just the perfect place to be. Because you're like kind of sweating, but you're also growing. Like growth is uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
You're growing then. And the beauty is if you're pushing on the edge of your stretch zone, that is increasing your comfort zone. It gets like pulled along with it. So your edge gets bigger. You'll never reduce, like panic will always be there. It's the size of the world, right? Yeah. But like your comfort and your stretch will always continuously just incrementally get bigger and bigger.
Was it easy for you to look at your life and figure out where the stretch zone ends and the screaming zone begins? Was that a clear delineation for you? Because it's a great framework, but I think some of the things that people feel when they're coming outside of their comfort zone is like everything feels like it's screaming, So how do you deal with that?
I think you have to just try. It's experimentation. For me, it was experimentation. I had to trial and error and find where I actually reasonably could do things and where I like couldn't. For instance, I remember one of my first public speaking things, again, it was like internal to my company. Like we were having like a little party and they were like, oh, come talk about your product or, something. And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. But like I forgot that I'm a hardcore planner. I like to sit down and be like, okay, like how do I think about this? What am I going to do? And sort of gear things out. So I was like on a whim. I was like, of course I'll stand up and talk to everyone about my product. I know everything about it. But all I remember is like going up and being like, so I'm sure you've all read this book, which was like really like slightly pertinent to my product. I don't remember anything after that. I talked for like maybe 15 minutes and then I sat down and I was beet red and everyone did not want to meet my eye. So I did well. So that was my panic. So I had to kind of walk it back and be like, okay, let's take the stakes down. Let's also make it not impromptu. Like I learned things about myself and I improved from there.
You talked about knowing that speaking in front of people was a struggle for you and being more visible outside of your company, even in certain ways inside of it, was uncomfortable. But it was growth that you knew was important to you. And you connected that to a larger vision of wanting to give back. And it sounds like that was also connected to your idea of growing within your career. What I want to know is, what were you afraid of? Like, why was this uncomfortable for you? Why did you feel like it was outside of your comfort zone? Hey listeners, we've heard from a lot of women this season who are growing and scaling businesses. So we know it's not Easy. If you've got a team that's growing fast or merging with another, that can feel really exciting, but then you're staring down two MarTech stacks that don't play nicely together. This is where GNW Consulting comes in. They help marketing teams sort through the mess, mapping out what to keep, what to streamline, and how to make it all actually work together. Think of them as your behind-the-scenes problem solvers, bringing strategy and then rolling up their sleeves for the execution. Plus, they're a supporter of Wednesday Women and our mission to amplify women execs. So if you're in the middle of a messy merger or it's on the horizon, head to gnwconsulting.com to learn more and see how they're helping marketing leaders move faster and smarter.
This is an interesting question. And of course, it harkens sort of your upbringing, all your childhood sort of
It's all connected.
development. It's all connected. So I grew up as a part of a State Department family where we moved around every 3 years. And this was pre-internet. It was sort of like, you would start a new school, you would make a bunch of friends, and then you would never see them again. So it was like almost like these like mini deaths in life. But there were also many like rebirths, and you could sort of like come back as who you wanted to be, your next iteration of self. And so I kind of like went through that in a way where I was constantly kind of thinking about like self-change, self-improvement, like a brand, I guess, actually. So I kind of went through this experience as a kid where I started to like, it's a weird thing where you kind of abstract away the really personal parts of yourself and you kind of like develop veneer, I guess. As an adult, you kind of learn, oh, it's actually authenticity. That is what people value. What's that funny Groucho Marx quote? If you can fake authenticity, like you've got it made or something.
Yeah.
Like that's authenticity is really what you need, right? And so I had this sort of like weird uncanny valley experience of, well, I've practiced into these veneers, but that's not going to work. That's not going to resonate. And that was something I had to like kind of burn through. And I think there was just something scary about being vulnerable in the way where I felt like I was being my real self or showing myself. But I got feedback as I did it more. I got feedback that this is what connects, Again, as an adult, you understand. So it's easy to understand. Like authenticity is what people want. It's the appealing thing. But it was like a scary journey, kind of like transforming.
That is a lot. And it's always funny to me that you can do a lot of work on yourself to feel comfortable in your own skin. And then the minute you step on a stage, there's this veneer that just pops up. I mean, you're on a stage. It feels like a performance. And so, of course, you feel like you need to perform some version of yourself. What did it feel like to start taking stages and start just being in the spotlight more in various ways? Because obviously, if you're organizing an event, you're not necessarily in the spotlight, but everybody is paying attention to you. What did it feel like to step into those things and start kind of peeling away the veneer and just get comfortable being yourself?
I think it started just through reps, actually, through practice, moving away from organizing the events into being, invited to podcasts, to be a speaker, like all the way to now, I'm a paid speaker. And obviously, like we're talking today. And actually, I just posted my first LinkedIn post ever.
Oh, congrats. That's so exciting.
Yeah, that was another funny thing where I was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable sharing my opinion in a professional world where then I'm going to get, people will see me in a certain way versus another way. So it was an interesting sort of like mental sort of challenge to overcome as well. Something as trivial as a LinkedIn post.
One of the things that a lot of the leaders I work with are afraid of is essentially being themselves and then having tension, right? Expressing their opinion, showing who they really are, and then someone disagrees with it or doesn't like it, right? And not slipping back into that veneer where it's like, okay, I will just go back to performing in a way that makes most people happy. I will make this about the other people instead of it also being about me being myself. Were there ever moments when it felt risky to be yourself, or moments when people didn't like it and you had to kind of brave that?
Yes, it does feel risky. I think it feels risky every single time that I reveal parts of myself. And that can be through a strong opinion on a product decision or in how we should engage with teams, how we should lead teams. So that can show up in a lot of different ways, I think. I think it still does feel scary. And this is sort of a part of my philosophy of, I guess, immersion therapy. Push yourself through, like push past the pain, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, if it's not uncomfortable, it's probably not worth doing.
Yeah.
If it's uncomfortable, it's definitely worth doing. This also makes me think of a quote that I think about all the time, actually. Culture is the worst behavior that you're willing to tolerate.
Ooh.
And whenever I feel like I'm uncomfortable, this is not good, I'm like, I gotta speak up and I have to push against this, because otherwise we'll all be lowered. The bar will be lowered for all of us.
Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it. And I think that's a different way of thinking about culture that's super realistic, because so many of the things that we let slide repeatedly, right? That just sneaks right into the culture.
100%.
I'm really excited that we're having this conversation because it feels like you're in the middle of your next chapter, having just posted your first LinkedIn post, because I'm sure that over the years, like, you've got a great network. You're already connected to so many people, both through the work that you've already done, but also through this community that you've helped to build, right? And so it's really exciting to hear that you're just getting started on LinkedIn, because I'm sure it's going to be amazing for you. But I want to hear, what it is that kept you from doing it until now, and what you're hoping for this next chapter.
I guess everything that I've done, a lot of podcasts, I've done a lot of, public speaking, like keynotes and webinar at this point, like I've done a ton in that vein. I think done a lot in terms of teaching, like through product school, taught a few cohorts, and then of course, like coaching, people I've obviously worked with. So I've done a lot of things, but like those things that I've done have always really felt aligned with like I'm giving back to the community. Whereas when I look at like LinkedIn, it feels more self-serving to me. And so I've always been very uncomfortable where I'm like, do you really think like people need like your opinion, your hot take? And I think it's like, because to be a LinkedIn influencer, you like kind of have to have some like controversial, I'm gonna, elbow you in the side with this type of approach is what it feels.
Yeah.
That's just so not me. Like, I am like the most like, we can all live in harmony. What's great for me is different than what's great for you. And there's enough space for all of us. And it's okay to think differently. And it's okay what, your future is bright. My future is bright.
See, Stephanie, this is exactly why you need to post on LinkedIn. This is exactly why you need to be there, is because there is like an emerging model of what it means to be like a quote LinkedIn influencer. And you don't have to be that in order to be appreciated by your community. I'm excited for you because I'm just going to give you my prediction here. I think that you're going to be in your stretch zone for a little bit, just because it's a different platform and there's this cookie cutter blueprint of what some people are doing to be successful. But I think you're going to find your groove, and like all those same messages that you give on stage and in workshops and in coaching, I think you're going to find your way into sharing them on LinkedIn, and so quickly it's going to come right into your comfort zone. I just have a feeling you've already done so much legwork to figure out like who you are and what you value and how that comes to light in all these other spheres. I think you're going to find it on LinkedIn so fast, and people are going to love you for it.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate that. But yes, looking at LinkedIn as like another way to give back is like 100%.
That's what people like. Nobody wants to be slapped with hot takes all day. It's going to be great. People are going to be so refreshed to hear what you have to say because you're not trying to do that to them. So if you're not already, find Stephanie on LinkedIn. We'll put her bio in the show notes, and get ready to feel like a cool breeze through your LinkedIn feed.
Cool off from the hot takes.
Yes. Cool off from the hot takes with Stephanie. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. It was such a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to following along for the next chapter of your journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. It was great speaking with you.
Now that we're at the end of today's episode, we hope you'll take a moment to reflect on how Stephanie's story might inspire your own. How can you tell the difference between your stretching zone and your screaming zone? And how can you see your visibility as a way of giving back to others?
If today's show inspired you to think of an extraordinary woman leader in your life, let her know about the Wednesday Women Executive Membership. It's a safe space for women leaders to tackle any challenge, ask questions, and uplift others. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your ratings help us grow and inspire even more people. Thank you to our Season 2 sponsor, GNW Consulting, to our executive producers, Melissa Moody and Leslie Greenwood, and to our technical producer, Yelena Georgievich, with Kind Media Productions. I'm your host, Ashley Lobbs, hoping the small ripple creates a big wave in your life. Until next time.